2025. Will the Russia-Ukraine war end or escalate? Shocking analysis. Hello and welcome to Global Panorama. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get the latest and most accurate updates on global politics. Today, we dive deep into a question that has the whole world on edge. When will the Russia-Ukraine war truly end? Will 2025 mark a turning point? Or is it just the beginning of an even greater catastrophe? Let's analyze 5 unthinkable yet highly possible scenarios. Scenario 1. Trump sets the deal. Will Ukraine accept territorial losses? Donald Trump has pledged to negotiate peace immediately upon taking office in January 2025. According to the Washington Post, U.S. officials are increasingly acknowledging the possibility that Ukraine may be forced to negotiate with Russia, potentially making territorial concessions. Reports suggest that as Trump prepares to return to the White House and Ukraine suffers heavy losses on the Kursk battlefield, Kyiv is in its weakest position since the war began. The Washington Post further reveals that several U.S. officials believe Ukraine may be compelled to enter peace talks within the next few months, with some European allies quietly admitting that territorial concessions might be inevitable. As President Joe Biden authorized Ukraine to use ATACMS missiles to strike deep into Russian territory and supplied banned landmines, many saw this as an effort to strengthen Kyiv before Trump takes office. However, Russia's defense ministry reported that Ukrainian forces have used Western weapons to attack Kursk twice in the past 3 days. Despite President Volodymyr Zelensky's firm stance against territorial compromises, U.S. officials indicate that Trump may cut military aid to Ukraine. Meanwhile, European allies have expressed frustration over Washington's delay in supplying Kyiv with advanced weaponry, particularly as Ukraine's military situation worsens. Estonian Defense Minister Hanno Pevkur emphasized that deploying foreign troops to Ukraine carries more risks than benefits. Instead, he called for continued financial assistance to Kyiv. Some European countries are considering sending troops in a training capacity following the U.S. decision to allow military contractors to enter Ukraine for equipment maintenance. The Biden administration justifies its military aid decisions based on battlefield conditions while limiting certain weapons to prevent escalation. However, as Ukraine focuses its defenses on Kursk, Russian forces have intensified their pressure on the Eastern Front, leading to continuous territorial losses for Kyiv. In response to Washington's provision of ATACMS missiles, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the deployment of Oreshnik hypersonic missiles armed with nuclear warheads. Russia has already used this weapon to strike a military-industrial facility in Dnipro. Putin called this a combat test and warned of even harsher responses if Ukraine and the West continue to escalate. By April 2025, the conflict has shown signs of de-escalation, with both sides gradually moving toward peace negotiations. Scenario 2. Russia crushes Donbas, Ukraine on the brink of collapse. If the U.S. cuts aid, Ukraine could lose to Russia's war of attrition. Analyst Nestorovic predicts Russia could fully control Donbas by the end of 2025. A heated confrontation between Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House on February 28, 2025, has sparked concerns that Washington might freeze military aid to Kyiv entirely. During an initial meeting meant to sign a mineral agreement, Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance harshly criticized Zelensky, accusing him of gambling on World War III and lacking gratitude toward the U.S. Shortly afterward, multiple U.S. sources revealed that the White House is considering suspending all military aid to Kyiv. This raises a major question. Can Ukraine continue fighting without key U.S. weapons? U.S. versus Europe. Who supports Ukraine more? Since Russia launched its military campaign in 2022, the U.S. has provided $119 billion in aid to Ukraine. Europe has contributed $138 billion, though much of it is focused on humanitarian and reconstruction efforts. In terms of military aid, the U.S. accounts for 20% of Ukraine's total weaponry. Europe provides 25%, including self-propelled artillery, Leopard 2 tanks, and Storm Shadow missiles. Expert François Heisborg, International Institute for Strategic Studies, notes that while Europe could replace the U.S. financially, It cannot compensate for advanced weapons like Patriot or ATACMS missiles. Key weapons Ukraine may lose if the U.S. ends aid. 1. Patriot air defense missiles. Ukraine completely depends on U.S. supplies for missile replenishments. Without Patriots, Ukraine cannot defend against Russian Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. 2. HIMARS and long-range missiles. The U.S. provides GMLRS missiles, 90 km range, and ATACMS, 300 km range, for deep strikes into Russia. While Europe supplies Storm Shadow missiles, their limited numbers make them an inadequate replacement. Intelligence support. According to the New York Times, the U.S. may stop sharing satellite and signal intelligence, something Europe cannot fully replace. Ukraine's alternative solutions. Switch to the EU's GovSatcom system. Develop its own intelligence network. Experts predict that Ukraine can hold its lines for 6 to 12 months using existing reserves. However, without U.S. support, casualties will rise due to a lack of air defenses and long-range munitions. If Trump cancels existing weapon contracts, Ukraine could face a strategic collapse by late 2025. If the U.S. completely halts aid, Russia could achieve total victory. But will this happen? Leave a comment, and let's move on to Scenario 3. Scenario 3. A frozen conflict, illusory peace. A temporary ceasefire might be signed, but neither side will fully disarm, creating a bloody handshake before renewed escalation. Let's analyze U.S. diplomacy amid the Ukraine crisis deadlock. With peace talks stalling, Trump's administration faces a major challenge: balancing pressure on both sides while maintaining U.S. mediation. Trump's frustration with both Zelensky and Putin marks a new phase in Washington's foreign policy, where harsh measures could be used to break the stalemate. While Washington applies pressure, Russia has launched a diplomatic counteroffensive by publicly accusing Ukraine of violating the ceasefire. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claims Russia has evidence of Ukrainian attacks on energy infrastructure and has criticized U.S. bad faith in negotiations. Russia is preparing sanctions if Kyiv continues violating the ceasefire. According to sources, the Kremlin may unilaterally withdraw from agreements, pushing the region toward renewed conflict. A rare diplomatic effort occurred when Kirill Dmitriev, head of Russia's Direct Investment Fund, visited Washington for talks with Trump's envoy, suggesting a possible direct dialogue. However, if negotiations fail, the U.S. could impose new sanctions, including a 25% tariff on Russian oil. While Russia may respond with military escalation, the current stalemate highlights the complexity of the war, where each side's interests are deeply entangled. Which scenario is most likely? In my view, 2025 will be a critical year balancing between negotiations and escalation. One thing is certain: Ukraine will pay a heavy price, either in territory or human lives. Support us by commenting and subscribing to never miss our latest global political analysis.